Hey, what's up, guys? It's Tom over here at TFCIV MMA. Thank y'all for tuning in. This video, it's kind of just going to be the introduction to my channel here. We're kind of going to go over my thoughts on UFC 280. Obviously, one of the best cards of the year took place this last weekend. Going to give you guys kind of a little introduction to me. We'll go over some other stuff that's happened kind of in the MMA world over this week. And thank y'all for tuning in. So start off with a little intro. My name's Tom Clark. I'm 20 years old, live down here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm a New Englander at heart, moved down here about a year ago, kind of just chasing dreams. And this is kind of something I've always wanted to do. I've had a love for MMA for going on 10 plus years now. And this is something my family, friends have always encouraged me to do, but never kind of jumped on it. So I'm here with you guys and we're going to try and make it work for you. So that's a little bit about me, and we'll jump right in, kind of UFC 280, start off there. Obviously, one of the best cards of the year. It's kind of a tough one. That card was so hyped up by me, by everybody else. It could have been the best card of all time, and I don't even know if it would have surpassed the high expectations we had for it. That's how high we were kind of building this one up, with how good it looked on paper, with all the talent they had on it. For me personally, I'll get it out of the way here early. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I'm a diehard TJ Dillashaw fan. Being a younger kid watching that first Barrow fight, fan for life. So seeing his chance to claim back gold, his chance to cement himself as the bantamweight GOAT to a lot of people, I was real hyped for this card. So it could have been the greatest card of all time. I don't even know if it could have touched my expectations that I personally had for it, and some of my friends kind of what they were thinking on it as well. But it did deliver. Ended up being a great card. Some great fights on the early prelims and the prelims. Start off in the first one, that illegal knee. That was kind of, but Rosas still ended up getting the win. So she put on a good performance. A lot of people, between Twitter, a lot of people were picking her by decision. So that was a good bet that hit if any of y'all had any money on the line for it. Muhammad Mokaev kind of did his thing. We all knew Mokaev was going to win that fight. Yeah, fight was put for him to win it. I don't know if he'll touch the John Jones record, but the kid may come close. Very talented. I wasn't too impressed for what I saw in the first 2 rounds from him. It almost looked like he was allergic to ground and pound there for a while. He was just going for submission after submission. But in the end, he did get it done, was able to get the finish, which was pretty impressive there. So it was nice. Some other good prelim performances. Petrosian, he did enough to get the job done, so it was good. My guy Kyle Bahalio, another good performance. I think he clearly got the win there. I had it 29-28 for him. Some people had it 30-27, but all in all, a pretty good fight. And then a guy that silenced all the haters. What about Bilal Muhammad there? He didn't look the best in the first round. He kind of came alive at the end of it, but Sean Brady was landing the heavier shots throughout the majority of the first round, kind of pushing the pace. Bilal was kind of pressuring him, but it was Sean's round. So for Bilal to come in the second and do what he did, I was pretty impressed by it. As a guy who's been very critical of Bilal here, I'm far from his biggest fan, but got to give the guy props where it's due, and he did a great job there. We opened up the main card with a good women's fight, Farrell versus Chookagian. It was both two good technical strikers. We know Caitlin Chookagian's not going to be going out there looking to finish a fight. She hasn't in the UFC. It's been all decision wins for her, and she's kind of been that girl right behind Valentina, where kind of that Max Holloway. No one had been beating her, but she had lost to Valentina, so she can't really get another rematch with how dominantly Valentina beat her. But Manon Farrell went out there, got the W by decision, put on a good performance. So it was it is what it is. I think Farrell is picking the right decision, doing another fight before jumping in there with Valentina. I think that is the smart move on her part, because she's not ready. But I did say the same thing about Talia Santos, and Talia Santos did surprise a lot of us. So we will see. Valentina's one of those champions. I didn't see Pena beating Nunez either, but she did. So it could happen. She's dominant champion, but they can always lose. We saw it with Kamaru back in August. One of one of the best save knockouts I've ever seen. And I've been watching MMA for going on 12 years now, so I was very impressed by it. So it was nice. Talk about another guy impressed, exceeding expectations. I've always believed in Beneil Dariush. He's a great fighter, but Gamrot had looked so good in those transitions against Saryukian, and just in his UFC career, the way he finished Jeremy Stephens with ease. I was very high on Gamrot coming into this fight, but Beneil came to put on a show. His defense on the takedowns was phenomenal. His scrambles, he never really let Gamrot take full control of him, which I was very impressed by, and clearly ruling the striking exchanges. That left hand he landed in the third round. Oh my goodness, it came out of hell. Very impressive. So another great performance by Beneil Dariush, and say what you want, that guy had some stones to be having that post-fight speech in Abu Dhabi. It was good, and I've liked Beneil for a while, but he gained a whole lot more respect with that performance, I think, for myself and a lot of the people that kind of overlooked him. He beat Tony Ferguson, but at that point, everyone was beating Tony Ferguson. So, looking back, people didn't know how impressive a win it actually was. So, it was nice. And then we go from the Dariush fight. That's when we hit some controversy. Petr Yan, Sugar Sean O'Malley, one of the good fights of the year. I swear, the UFC needs to keep doing these up-and-coming prospects versus top contenders, because we're getting great fights. We had Peter and Sugar, Chimaev and Burns. I was there in person for Chimaev and Burns, one of the best fights. I'm biased because I was there, and that arena was deafening. But I think they need to start doing those kind of fights more often, because both of the big high-profile ones this year have both been complete barn burners. So it's been nice. We go straight into it. First round, very close. Both guys having success on the striking exchanges. Personally, I had the first round for Yan. I know the new scoring criteria, damage trumps all, damage trumps all. But when the damage is very comparable, which I think it was, I think Yan getting those takedowns won him the round. Personally, I can see a split decision, but it's got to be in Yan's favor, in my opinion. And this is a guy, I like Sean O'Malley. I've liked Sean O'Malley for a while. I love his charisma. I think that's something. I love how he self-promotes himself. So I was hoping he'd go in there, put on a great performance, possibly get the win. But I think you could even see in his face after that fight, he knew he didn't really, he didn't look happy, or he didn't look like he just won the biggest fight of his life. And I think that's kind of because he knew he didn't. Round two, clearly, Petr Yan went out there, landed some shots. O'Malley's got a hell of a chin on him, I'll tell you that much. Some of the shots he took there from Yan, very impressive by O'Malley. Put on a great show. The third round, another close one. Personally, I would give it to O'Malley. Yan did get the takedowns, had the back, but he didn't really do much. And I think the damage was far in favor of O'Malley in that round. And you're going to say, Tom, you gave Petr the first due to takedowns, but I think the damage was so close in the first round, the takedowns set Yan over. And I do think these judges don't get to see significant strike totals. They look at you, and when Sugar landed that knee, diced Peter's eye open, Peter's gushing out for the rest of the fight. I can see why they gave Sean the third round, and I probably would too. But all in all, I had it 29-28 Petr Yan personally. And now, I told you guys I was a huge Dillashaw fan. Now we just go into the heartbreak of the co-main event. All week, TJ had seemed off, not kind of high energy, not his usual self. Being a huge TJ fan, having a lot of money on the fight, I had convinced myself TJ was locked in, because legacy-wise, this was the biggest fight of his life. Personal-wise, those Garbrandt fights had to feel great. To silence Team Alpha Male, to beat Barao in the first one, cement his legacy, those were all great. But this fight would have cemented TJ Dillashaw as the greatest bantamweight of all time. Would have made him a 3-time champion. Would have redeemed him from the steroids. Everybody getting on, I shouldn't even say steroids, because there's a big difference between steroids and EPO, from the performance-enhancing drugs. And it really would have redeemed him, and I think in a lot of fans' eyes. And I was under the impression he was kind of off all week, because he knew that. He knew how big the moment was, so he was staying composed, and that's what I had told myself. But come to find out, he was kind of being quiet, a little shit talk here and there, mainly because he was coming into this fight very compromised. Straight from the get-go, he looked good. It was TJ, the good footwork on the feet. He had one where he does that slip with the right, follow up with the overhand left, and he couldn't even throw the left. And I said, that's not TJ, what's happening? Got taken down shortly thereafter. He braces it, you see the shoulder come out, and that's when, why didn't he throw that left? That's why. His shoulder's all messed up. And let me just say, love him or hate him, I know a lot of people hate him because of the EPO. You cannot question the heart or the competitor of TJ Dillashaw. To go through that, look what happened in the Yair Brian Ortega fight. As soon as that shoulder came out, it was done for Ortega. And I love Brian Ortega, but that's how 95% of the roster would react to that. TJ Dillashaw stayed for a full round with Aljamain Sterling on his back, and I'd say almost defended just as good as Jan, maybe if not a little bit better, to make it through the round like that with one arm. I think it proves how good TJ is. It proves to the toughness. They go back to the corner. They're able to get it back in. That's when we listen to Mark Goddard and we find out TJ had told him before the fight, hey, my shoulder's going to pop out. Do not stop the fight. And when I heard that, I said, oh, man, I love you, TJ, but maybe could use some heads up before we're dropping all this money on you, man. But all in all, I lost some money on it, I'll be frank with you guys, but it hurt to watch as a diehard TJ Dillashaw fan because I've watched the guy's whole career. I knew how much that fight meant to him, and to see him go out like that, I know how much it hurt him with the ultra competitor that TJ is, and it hurt me as a fan seeing that. But I thought he had a good post-fight interview. I thought he knew what was coming going into that octagon like that, but he wanted to give it his best go. We can question all the time what it's for. Was it money? Possibly, but I mean, TJ's a business owner. I don't know if that was the main deciding factor or what, but that obviously, we'll never know why he stepped into that octagon. If I had to guess, it's because we know how much of a competitor TJ Dillashaw is. He maybe thought when this happened back in April, damn, I've already been out for a year. I was out for 2 years before that. If I take another year off, look at Darren Till. Darren Till gets hurt, pulls out, people ostracize him. TJ gets hurt, fights, people ostracize him. You can't win with the UFC. The fan base, you can't win MMA in general, not just the UFC. As much as I love it, and I'm big on MMA Twitter, I'm always on there, we're a very toxic fan base for the sport. And so it was a lose-lose for TJ. It was tough to watch him get beat like that, but he proved a lot of heart, and I think he did end up gaining some fans back, personally, but maybe that's just me. Then we go to the main event. So going into last May, Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler. I was high on Michael Chandler. I've been a big Michael Chandler guy, actually, since the Bellator days. That first Eddie Alvarez fight, I watched it. I said, Michael Chandler, that's my Bellator guy. Big fan, been that for a while. So when he came over into the UFC, I was high on him. When he knocked out Dan Hooker the way he did, after Dan Hooker had just had a war with Dustin Poirier, I thought, he's going to go beat Charles Oliveira. He's going to get this belt. They'll probably do the Poirier fight or the McGregor fight. But Michael Chandler could be champion here too, cement himself as one of the all-time great lightweights. But we all know how that fight went. Charles Oliveira took a beating. Looked like Michael Chandler was walking away with it. And then start of the second round, gets caught. And ever since that day, I'm only referencing it now, because ever since that day, I said, I'm not doubting Charles Oliveira again until someone gives me a reason to. Until Charles Oliveira himself gives me a reason to. We go into the Poirier fight. I picked Charles Oliveira because that same mindset. I'm not doubting him unless he gives me the reason to. What does he do? He goes into the Poirier fight, takes a beating in that first, puts a beating on Poirier in the second round. I know he hooked the gloves, all that kind of stuff. But regardless, he put a beating on Poirier in the second and then finished him in the third with that gorgeous rear naked choke off the back. Great performance. Going into the Gaethje fight, same thing. I'm not doubting Charles until he gives me a reason to. Weigh-ins happen. I'm kind of thinking in the back of my mind, what's going on here? I thought something had to be up with the scales, because you can't tell me a guy who's been cutting weight for, what, 10 years now, in an hour couldn't even lose 0.01 pounds? Because he weighed in the exact same 155 and a half an hour later, which seemed very off to me. If he had weighed in at 155.3 or 155.2, I'd agree with you. But at the same time, I feel like something had to be up with the scales. Probably just my bias, but that's just me. But I had in the back of my mind what's going on, but I still picked Charles going into that fight. Took some shots from Gaethje, got knocked down in the first. I'm still will stand by that second knockdown. Charles was faking it to try and get Gaethje down. But regardless, he gets up, basically knocks Justin Gaethje out. Goes down to the ground, chokes him out. Very impressive fashion. Another great performance. So, with all that being said, we go into this performance. I'm picking Charles Oliveira because the guy has proven me wrong against Michael Chandler, and I've said I'm not going to pick against him, and he's made me right 2 more times since then. So, I knew Islam Makhachev's a beast. I had watched Khabib. I was a big Conor McGregor guy growing up as a young Irish kid in New England, and my dad passed away when I was young. Watching Conor McGregor, watching those guys was kind of an escape for me, and I loved it. So I was real big on Conor McGregor. Khabib manhandled him, and I couldn't stand Khabib, but I recognized the talent. And I knew Islam Makhachev had that same similar talent, that great Sambo base, but possibly maybe even a better striker than Khabib, to be honest. So I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I wasn't picking against Charles until he proved to me that I could pick against him, which he hadn't yet. But we all know how this fight goes down. Kind of pure domination by Islam Makhachev. And it was kind of tough for me to watch. This guy who likes Charles, he had his moments kind of in the first few. Nothing crazy. Mainly Islam domination. Charles landed a nice up kick off the ground. Didn't faze Islam, though. And then Islam finishes him with the arm triangle choke. Very impressive. Great performance. And father's dream comes true, as much as it pains me to say it. But Islam Makhachev is our 155-pound champion. He's going to be fighting Alexander Volkanovski in Perth in February. And actually, what I was planning to get into after going over 280, in my opinions on it, which I gave you, was kind of where we go next. Obviously, we have Islam versus Alex in Perth. And the pick I had been saying since after Aljo beat TJ was, I said, you got to do Aljo versus Cejudo. That's the fight to make at this point. Sean O'Malley did not look good enough in that fight to earn a title shot. A lot of people are going to say, well, Dana said. Dana's going to go back on his word. We all know it. And I had been saying that since Saturday afternoon when the fights happened. And lo and behold, on Twitter today, gets reported that they're trying to make Cejudo versus Aljo in Perth. Co-main event to Islam versus Alex, which I think would be great. I think Cejudo's probably the biggest threat in that division to Aljamain. Personally, I wasn't too hot on Triple C at the start of his career. Obviously, got finished by DJ in that first fight, had the Benavidez fight. Wasn't too huge on him, but he kept proving me wrong. Winning that flyweight belt from DJ, it was close, but I think it was the right decision. Henry won that fight. And then me being a big TJ fan, I picked against Henry. He knocked my guy out. So, once again, goes up. Impressive performance against Marlon Moraes. And then, obviously, impressive performance against Dominic Cruz. Retires. Now he's coming back. There was rumors about him fighting Volk. We know that's not going to happen. But possibly, if he beats Aljamain, maybe then he gets the Volk fight. Depending on whether Volk beats Islam or not. Personally, I'd take Islam in that fight, but hard to count out Volk. Guy's pound for pound #1 for a reason. So those are where we go from there on the first two. Islam Alex, Aljo Henry. Now on the other side of the main event, Charles Oliveira. I think you pair him with another guy from 280. I think him versus Beneil Dariush is the fight to make personally. Charles said he wants to be active. He wants to get that belt back. Dariush, if it wasn't for Volkanovski, Dariush would be getting the shot. So, if Charles could beat Dariush, he may be able to get back in there and get another rematch here pretty soon. That's the fight to make there. In the other half of the co-main event, obviously TJ's going to need surgery. He's going to be out for a year, 14 months maybe. So I think the fight you make there, who's another guy kind of in that latter stage of their career, takes big breaks between fights. TJ, Dominic Cruz too. I'll stand by. TJ won that first fight, in my opinion. And he's always wanted to get that one back because he feels like he won that first fight. So do him versus Dom, headline of a fight night, maybe a co-main event. I feel like with those two guys, you got to make it 5 rounds. So that's why I said. Or maybe even you do it as the highlight fight, kind of how they did Lawler versus Diaz. Make it 5 rounds. Just do it. Who cares? That fight's got to be 5 rounds, though, and that is the fight to make. I think Sean O'Malley, you probably do him versus Cheeto Vera rematch. Who at winner of that gets the winner of Aljo versus Henry. Gamrot could possibly see maybe Fiziev if Gaethje won't fight Fiziev. I know Gaethje's kind of chasing Conor McGregor right now. Maybe you do Gamrot Fiziev. Maybe you do the rematch of Arman Tsarukyan, Mateusz Gamrot. Great fight the first time. I'd love to see it again. So that could be a possibility. We got plenty of options. And then I think at this point, I'm kind of torn with the UFC on what to do with Petr Yan. Petr Yan is still, skill for skill, either the best or one of the best bantamweights on the planet. We all know it, but on paper, he's 1-3 in his last 4. Do you give him a guy like Rob Font, where he is favored, where he can get the win? Or do you toss him right to the Wolves, but where a win can get him right back to a title shot against a guy like Merab Dvalishvili? I don't know. I don't know how the UFC plays it, but Font or Merab for Yan, and that's kind of where I'm going there. And that would kind of just be where I want to see most of the stars from the main card go after there. That's just my opinion. Obviously, I know some people are saying, give Sean the title fight, give Cheeto the title fight. I don't think so. I think Aljo's going to get it. We already know who's getting the title fight at lightweight. Volk's getting it in Perth. Got Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa as the possibly, that may not even be a co-main anymore if they can get Aljamain versus Cejudo done. Gonna be another stacked card. We get these next 6 months, hell of a time to be a UFC fan. So we covered 280. We covered where we go next. I said we were going to talk about a few more things. Talk about a hell of a time to be a UFC fan. I'm at work today, kind of patrolling Twitter. One guy I always got the notifications on for, because another one of my all-time favorites, Johnny Bones. One guy that I got into MMA right as he was starting, so I kind of got to watch his ascent to greatness. So I'm a big Johnny Bones fan. Get a little tweet notification, and it's been weeks since I got one. John Jones saying, hey, I'm training right now for Stipe at 282. I don't know what him and the UFC are doing, but that's what I want to do. I'm staying ready. That was music to my ears, man. It's been almost 3 years. I want to see John Jones fight. I'm a John Jones guy. He's the greatest fighter of all time. How can you not want to see the dude fight? So I was really looking forward to that. Ariel had reported in the past, but lo and behold, after John tweets that, about 2 hours later, the UFC sends out their email confirming that Glover Yuri 2 is the main event for 282. So, seems like we're going to have to wait till next year to get John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, or maybe at that point you just do the Francis Ngannou fight because he's going to be healthy. But I'm thinking the early March card in Las Vegas, and other news coming out today. Guess who's going to be fighting in March? And I think would be the perfect 5-round co-main event for either John Stipe or John Francis. Colby Chaos Covington, cardio machine, all-American wrestler, versus the boogeyman, Khamzat Borj Chimaev. Talk to any of my friends here that talk MMA with me. I'm huge on the Khamzat. I've been huge on Khamzat since he came into the UFC. I met him in April, real quick. I'm not going to say, oh, we talked. I met the guy real quick, fist bumped him. Dude's a beast, and I'm real high on his potential just watching him and watching that Gilbert Burns fight live. One of my favorite tweets ever. After that second round, we all know how the fight went. Dominant first round by Khamzat. Great second round by Gilbert. Teddy Atlas tweets, we know what Khamzat has on the outside. We're about to find out what he has on the inside. an amazing tweet in the middle of an all-time great fight, and Khamzat proved what he had on the inside. He has what it takes. And now a lot of people are going to be calling him out for the missing weight, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it sucked, but did any of you guys really want to see Nate Diaz get slaughtered by Khamzat Chimaev? I don't think so. So I think a lot of y'all are probably happy that the Tony Ferguson fight ended up happening instead. But we're going to get Khamzat Chimaev, Colby Covington, 5 rounds, probably either as the co-main event to the later March card, which is looking to be in England, with Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards rematch. Do you make it the co-main there? Or do you do it in Las Vegas, co-main of what I assume will be either John Jones, Stipe Miocic for an interim belt, or John Jones, Francis Ngannou for the undisputed heavyweight throne. John Jones is homecoming, kind of gets that belt. I think John gets that belt pretty easily. I mean, Francis was shooting for dear life on Cyril Gane, and we all know Francis ain't gonna try and wrestle John Jones. But that's kind of the wrap up for today. Just kind of my opinions. Love them or hate them. This is kind of something I've wanted to do for a while. Like I said, I've been watching MMA for going on 12 years now. People always told me I should do this, but I was kind of scared to. But I'm young. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to. So thank y'all for listening. I'm probably going to do a video on Sunday with my review of the fight night this weekend. We got a main event, Calvin Kattar, Arnold Allen. Great fight. So I'll see y'all on Sunday, all right?